Everyone thought Flight 447 was saved, that the emergency was over, that they would land safely. But what they did not know, what nobody realized until it was too late to hide, was that a 16-year-old boy sitting in seat 1 to C had been fixing the plane the entire time. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. And please like and subscribe for more videos like this. Marcus Chen was not supposed to be on this flight. He was supposed to be at home in Seattle, studying for his physics exam. Maybe tinkering with the old radio equipment in his garage, like he did every evening after school. But his grandmother in Boston had fallen ill, and his mother needed him there. She could not leave work, so Marcus went alone. 16 years old, first time flying by himself, clutching a backpack filled with textbooks and a laptop covered in engineering stickers. He had always been the quiet kid, the one teachers forgot was in the room until test scores came back and they realized he had aced everything without saying a word. He did not talk much because he was too busy thinking, too busy taking things apart in his mind and putting them back together better than before. The flight was packed. Business travelers typing furiously on laptops, families with crying babies, college students with headphones drowning out the world. Marcus sat by the window, watching the ground crew move around the plane like ants, checking engines, loading cargo, doing all the things that kept a metal tube safely in the air. He had always been fascinated by planes. Not in the way most kids were, not because they were cool or fast, but because they were problems solved. Thousands of problems, actually. How do you make something that heavy fly? How do you keep people safe at 30,000 feet? How do you make sure nothing goes wrong? Marcus understood that every bolt, every wire, every system had a purpose. He had spent years reading aviation manuals online, watching maintenance videos, studying schematics that most adults could not make sense of. It was not just a hobby. It was how his brain worked. He saw systems, patterns, solutions. The plane took off smoothly. Marcus watched the city shrink below, the buildings becoming toys, the roads becoming threads. Everything was normal. The flight attendants served drinks, people reclined their seats, the hum of the engines became background noise. 2 hours into the flight, somewhere over the plains, Marcus noticed something. It was subtle, so subtle that nobody else seemed to catch it. A vibration. Not the normal kind that comes with turbulence or air pressure changes. This was different, rhythmic, consistent, coming from somewhere deep in the plane's structure. He pressed his hand against the wall beside his seat and felt it. A pulse, too fast, too irregular. He closed his eyes and listened, tuning out the conversations, the crying baby 3 rows back, the overhead announcements, just the vibration. His mind started running through possibilities. Engine imbalance. No, it would be louder. Hydraulic issue. Maybe, but the plane was still responding normally to course corrections. Something electrical. That felt closer. He pulled out his laptop and opened a folder he had saved months ago. Schematics of a Boeing 737, the exact model of this plane. He had downloaded them for a school project on aerodynamics, spent weeks studying every system, every backup, every phase. He knew this plane better than most mechanics. He traced his finger across the screen, following the electrical pathways, the redundancy systems, the warning indicators that should alert the cockpit if something went wrong. If the pilots knew about the vibration, they would have said something by now, which meant either the sensors were not picking it up or something was masking the signal. Both options were bad. Marcus looked around. Nobody else seemed concerned. The flight attendants were chatting near the galley. Passengers were watching movies, reading books, sleeping. He thought about saying something, but what would he say? "Excuse me, I am 16 and I think there is a problem with the plane based on a vibration only I can feel." They would think he was scared, anxious, making things up. He unbuckled his seatbelt and stood up, stretching like he needed to walk. He made his way toward the back of the plane, moving slowly, feeling the vibration through the floor. It was stronger near the rear, definitely not the engines. He glanced at the emergency exit row, at the panel beside it. Behind that panel were access points to some of the plane's secondary systems. Electrical routing, backup controls, things that did not need constant monitoring but were critical if primary systems failed. He returned to his seat, but he could not sit still. The vibration was getting worse. Not by much, but enough that he knew it was not going to stop on its own. He opened his laptop again and pulled up a diagnostic flowchart he had created for fun. A way to troubleshoot aircraft systems if all the normal indicators failed. He started eliminating variables. Fuel system, no. Pressurization, no. Flight controls, no. That left electrical and hydraulics. He needed more information. He needed to see what was happening in real time. But he was a passenger. He had no access to cockpit systems, no way to check gauges or monitors, unless he improvised. Marcus reached into his backpack and pulled out a small device he had built last summer. It looked like a modified smartphone, but it was actually a frequency analyzer. He had made it to detect radio signals for a science fair project, but he had added features over time. BLUETOOTH, scanning, Wi-Fi packet sniffing, electromagnetic field detection. He powered it on and started scanning. The plane's internal systems were not supposed to broadcast wirelessly, but there were always leaks. Sensors that communicated with each other, diagnostic tools that maintenance crews used on the ground. Things that were not meant to be accessed in flight, but were not completely locked down either. He found something. A weak signal, encrypted but not impossible to crack. It was a data stream from one of the plane's monitoring systems. He routed it through his laptop, ran a decryption script he had written for a coding competition, and waited. 30 seconds. The data started flowing. He saw it immediately. Voltage irregularities in the secondary electrical bus. Small fluctuations, but growing. If they continued, they would eventually cascade into a failure. The backup generators would kick in, but if the problem was in the bus itself, the backups would not help. The plane would lose power to critical systems. Lights, communication, possibly even some of the flight controls. Marcus felt his heart pounding. He looked around again. Still nobody noticed. The pilots probably had no idea because the primary systems were fine. This was a hidden problem, the kind that only showed up in data logs after a crash, the kind investigators found when they asked how did this happen. He could alert the flight attendants, but what would they do? They were trained for medical emergencies, evacuations, not electrical diagnostics. By the time they relayed the information to the cockpit, by the time the pilots ran their own diagnostics, it might be too late. He had to do something himself. Marcus stood up and walked to the rear of the plane again, this time with purpose. He stopped at the emergency exit row and knelt down like he had dropped something. He looked at the panel beside the exit. It was secured with tamper-proof screws, but he had a multi-tool in his backpack. He had brought it because he always carried tools. He could not help it. He glanced around. The nearest flight attendant was busy helping someone in first class. The passengers around him were absorbed in their screens. He pulled out the multi-tool and carefully started unscrewing the panel. It took 2 minutes. The panel came loose. Inside was a bundle of wires, circuit boards, connectors. He pulled out his frequency analyzer again and held it close. The electromagnetic readings were off the charts near one specific junction. A relay switch, probably corroded or damaged, causing intermittent contact. Every time the switch failed to connect properly, voltage spiked through the system. Eventually, it would burn out completely. He did not have a replacement relay, but he did have something almost as good. In his backpack was a small circuit board from a project he had been working on. It was designed to regulate power for a homemade drone, but the principles were the same. Voltage in, voltage out, smooth and consistent. He pulled it out along with some wire he had wrapped around a pencil for no reason other than he liked being prepared. He started disconnecting the faulty relay, hands steady despite the adrenaline. He had done this 100 times on smaller projects. Same theory, same execution, just higher stakes. He wired his circuit board into the system, bypassing the bad relay, creating a new pathway for the current. He tested it with his analyzer. The voltage stabilized. The fluctuations stopped. He exhaled slowly, then reassembled the panel, screwing it back into place. Nobody had noticed. Marcus returned to his seat. His hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally hitting him. He checked his laptop. The data stream showed stable readings. The voltage irregularities were gone. The plane was fine. He had fixed it. But he could not tell anyone. If he told the flight attendants, they would report him. If they reported him, the pilots would have to land the plane immediately as a precaution. The authorities would get involved. He would be questioned, possibly arrested for tampering with an aircraft. It did not matter that he had saved everyone. It only mattered that he was not supposed to touch anything. So he said nothing. He closed his laptop, put his tools away, and sat in silence. The plane landed in Boston 2 hours later. Smooth, uneventful, exactly as it should be. Passengers grabbed their bags, filed off the plane, went on with their lives. Nobody knew how close they had come. Nobody except Marcus. He walked through the terminal, exhausted, trying to process what had happened. He had just saved a plane full of people, and he could not tell a single person about it. Not his mother, not his grandmother, not anyone. It was the loneliest feeling in the world. But the story did not end there. 3 days later, Marcus was back in Seattle. He had barely slept, his mind replaying every moment of the flight, wondering if he should have said something, wondering if staying silent made him complicit somehow. Then his mother called him downstairs. She was watching the news. A report about Flight 447. Apparently, after the plane landed in Boston, maintenance crews ran a routine inspection. They found the makeshift repair in the electrical panel. At first, they thought it was sabotage. The FBI was called. The airline launched an investigation. Security footage from the flight was reviewed. And there he was, Marcus Chen, kneeling by the panel, unscrewing it, working inside. They had questioned the flight crew, the passengers nearby. Nobody had noticed anything unusual. Just a quiet teenager who kept to himself. The news anchor was calling him a hero. Aviation experts were saying that if the relay had failed completely, the plane could have lost critical systems mid-flight. The pilots might have been forced to make an emergency landing, or worse. But Marcus did not feel like a hero. He felt terrified. His mother was staring at him, waiting for an explanation. He told her everything. She did not yell. She did not cry. She just hugged him and told him he was the bravest person she knew. The airline released a statement thanking Marcus for his quick thinking, though they were careful to add that passengers should never attempt repairs on their own. The FAA opened an investigation, not into Marcus, but into how the faulty relay had passed inspection in the first place. Marcus was interviewed by reporters, aviation blogs, engineering forums. People called him a prodigy, a genius, a kid who saved hundreds of lives. But what stayed with Marcus was not the praise. It was the realization that sometimes the system fails. Sometimes the sensors do not catch the problem. Sometimes the experts do not see what is right in front of them. And sometimes the person who saves the day is the one nobody expects. A quiet kid with a backpack full of tools and a brain that never stops solving problems. He went back to school, back to his normal life. But he never stopped carrying his tools. He never stopped listening for problems nobody else could hear, because he understood something that most people never learn. The world is full of hidden failures, silent breakdowns, disasters waiting to happen. And sometimes, all it takes is one person paying attention to stop them. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this.